My love for medicinal recipes started about 10 years ago when I switched from focusing on treating my symptoms when I got sick to actually preventing illness. I have a ton of respect for modern medicine. In fact, most of my career before I retired was in healthcare. And so I really do believe that modern medicine is truly a miracle and it has really helped a number of people. But I think my thoughts changed years ago. When my husband and I got married, he was very much into homeopathic. He had seen Eastern doctors and he was very much into trying to solve our medical issues through prevention and treatment through more natural means. And so I naturally was curious, and so I got into that as well. See, up until this point, I had been focused so much on just treating my symptoms whenever I got sick, and I got sick a lot. I don't know what was going on in my life back then, but I was sick so much, and whenever I got sick, I would get a fever, and whenever I got a fever, I got tachycardia, which just means that my heart beats abnormally fast when I'm sick, over 100 beats per minute. And my doctors were a little concerned, so it was really like a big deal for us and for me to focus on trying to prevent getting sick. And so this is what kind of led me down into the path of homeopathics, because I feel like they really are a natural way of treating things, but they're also, for me, really, really good at preventing things. And since we got into homeopathics, believe it or not, I have not been sick. And I think it's close to 10 years now. Now I do get the occasional headache, migraines. I still get some of those, and still the occasional allergies and stuffy nose and those kinds of things. But I literally have not had a flu. I have not gotten sick. I didn't get COVID. I have not had a fever in 10 years now. And I really attribute it to this wellness approach that I have taken. When I first started down this homeopathic or medicinal recipes, I really focused on just finding natural products. And you can do that. You can totally find natural products in the store. And that's how I actually started. And then I kind of got into let me make my own. So I would buy the herbs and I would buy the different, ingredients at the store or online and have them shipped. Then, once my gardening dreams got even bigger, I really started to focus on growing the plant, processing the plant, and making my own medicinals. So what I'm showing you right here, is the first stage, which was growing the plants. It's kind of crazy to think about it, but it can take a year sometimes to grow and process one of these herbs to make it into a medicine, which is a little bit labor intensive. So if you're not that into that long of a time period, no worries. You can totally buy a lot of the ingredients for this online. But I started out by picking some borage, some chamomile that you see here, and then the next one that I'm picking up is going to be calendula flowers. I do a lot more than this. I also do, ginger, turmeric, garlic, elderberry, echinacea, lavender. I mean, the list goes on and on. In fact, I have a video that I'll put at the end of this of my favorite 30 herbs and spices. And that video, it's a little long, but it does have timestamps, and it will show you every single one of the ones that I grow in this area, as well as how I use them. So the first recipe that we're going to be doing today is going to be tinctures, and I'm doing two different tinctures here. I'm doing a bee balm tincture and I'm doing a borage tincture. So I had collected all the flowers for both of these. I laid them out. You can dehydrate them in a dehydrator, but for me this time of year, I usually just lay them on a screen or just a towel or on a paper towel or a paper plate, whatever you have, and I just let them air dry. It usually takes maybe about 4 to 6 days for that to happen, and then I store them in jars once they're completely dry, and then I can make my medicinal recipes whenever I want. So for borage is one of those that is a calming herb. It's really designed for anxiety or nervousness, maybe a little bit with sleep. Whereas bee balm, the other one that I'm going to be doing, is more for colds and coughs. This is when you actually are getting sick, how to get ahead of it and how to treat it. Typically in the past, I have done tinctures on my channel with glycerin because when I was working, I did not have a very good relationship with alcohol. And so I went on 2 years of not having alcohol in our house at all. And this year, I actually did start bringing it back into the house. We don't drink it. That's still something that, I just don't have a healthy relationship. I don't expect that I will ever have a healthy relationship with it. But I want to be able to keep it in the house for certain recipes like this one. And so all you do is you take those dried flowers and then you pour a very high alcohol content. I like vodka. That's probably the easiest one to do. It has the perfect alcohol content. And you submerge those flowers, really pack them in there, and then submerge them with the vodka. Then you're going to let that sit in a dark, cool place, so in the AC, in a cabinet, for about 6 to 8 weeks. The longer you go, the more it's going to infuse. Every time you open that cupboard, just kind of give it a little shake. And then after it has infused for that period of time, you will drain out the flowers and then just leave the vodka. And now the vodka will have the healing elements that the flowers had. The cool thing about using vodka or another alcohol rather than glycerin is that it will last significantly longer. Glycerin, while it's a great substitute, it does have a shelf life of only about a year, where vodka or alcohol can last up to 5 years, so I don't have to necessarily grow this plant all the time. So once I strain this out later in about 6 to 8 weeks, I will put it in an amber colored dropper bottle, and whenever I'm feeling sick, I'll give myself the bee balm, about 2 to 3, 4, 5, 6 drops, whatever it takes, every few hours until, it starts to have the effect. Same thing with the borage. Now, borage isn't one that you want to take on a regular basis. There's been some concerns about liver. I am not a doctor. Definitely talk to your doctor before you try using any of these medicinal recipes. But I do know that borage isn't something you want to take on a regular basis. This is just for, you got a big event going on. So you want to take it the evening before. You want to get some rest. The other thing that I wanted to do with my bee balm is make an oxymel. So if for some reason I have a really scratchy throat and I don't really want to be ingesting the alcohol from the tincture, instead I can do an oxymel. And an oxymel is treated the same way as the tincture, except instead of using vodka, you're going to use equal parts dried flowers, equal parts apple cider vinegar, and equal parts honey. And so you mix that all together and you put it in that dark, cool cabinet for 6 to 8 weeks, and then we will drain off the flowers and leave just the vinegar and the honey to use. And the reason why I really like this one for when you have a cold is nothing feels better on your throat than a little bit of hot honey. So you have the medicinal properties of the bee balm, you have those antiseptic properties of the apple cider vinegar, and then you have this raw honey. It has lots of nutrients, as well as it's going to coat your throat nicely. So I give that a good shake. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to label it, because I will never remember these if I don't label them. So the flowers change colors as time goes by, so you will forget which flower is which. So I label what it is that's in the jar, as well as the date that I started it and the date that I'm aiming to end it. If it goes a little over, no worries. If it goes a little under, no worries. You're just aiming for that 6 to 8 week time frame. Now these are some that I had done before. One is a glycerin, which is oregano oil. That's the one that I'm pouring off right there. I like the oregano oil with a glycerin because it just tastes better, and I keep so much oregano just for culinary reasons that I don't mind making this every single year, and we go through it very, very quickly. It just has a better taste because oregano oil does not have a great taste, and it is really good for when you have a sore throat. So I use glycerin because it gives it a little bit of a sweet taste. It's also a little bit thicker, so it coats the throat a little bit better. I separate the oregano from the glycerin using a colander, and then what's left over is just the infused glycerin. And I'll put this also in an amber bottle. Now the other two are actually infused in olive oil, because I'm going to be doing things with these that are more for skincare rather than for ingestion. Now you could of course ingest olive oil, it just doesn't taste as great. But this large one right here is citronella. So I've infused citronella in some olive oil. My goal is to make a mosquito spray, and I'm going to be testing a couple different recipes this year. I am told that citronella is not like the best herb to use to get rid of mosquitoes or to deter mosquitoes. Actually, lemongrass is. So I have purchased a lemongrass plant. It's growing well, but it's not at a point yet that I can harvest from it. So I figured with the time I would go ahead and do the citronella. It smells great. It's going to be a wonderful addition, although I don't know how effective it would be without the lemongrass. So we are going to wait on the lemongrass to do the mosquito spray. So once we've drained off all the olive oil for the citronella, I'm just going to put that oil back in a clean jar, label it just like we have with everything else, and I'm going to set that on a shelf. It should be good for quite a while. And then the last one that we're working on today in olive oil is calendula. Calendula is a great herb. I absolutely love it. I guess it's really a flower, but it is a hippie neosporin. So it has a lot of antibacterial properties. It has a lot of healing properties, so I like to use it in pretty much all my skincare things. And we're going to be doing 2 skincare items today. We're going to be doing a lotion bar, and then we're also going to be doing some lip balm. Both of them will contain the calendula in it. But for this is the prep work for those. And I have infused the calendula in the olive oil for 8 weeks. And then we're going to pour it into this nice clean jar so that we can use it in our future recipes. So let's talk about the lotion bar. This lotion bar I have been wanting to make for about forever. So as I've gotten older, I find that my skin is so much more dry. Now I've done different things with calendula before, like soaps and salves. But I really wanted something that had a bit more substance to it, something that was harder. So I wanted to make a lotion bar, one that I can grab with my hand and rub on my skin, particularly my feet. But it's also really good for, other than dry skin, sunburn, burns, anything where you have like little scratches. Maybe you've been out in the garden and you're fighting your blackberry bush and it's got thorns, or your lemon and lime trees and they have thorns and you've gotten all scratched up. This is a great medicinal herb to use. So it's equal parts calendula oil, equal parts beeswax, and then equal parts shea butter. You can also use other kinds of butters like cocoa butter. I did a triple recipe this time because I wanted to make several of these bars. So I did 3/4 of a cup of each of those items. So 3/4 of a cup of the oil, 3/4 of a cup of the beeswax, and then 3/4 of the cup of shea butter. If for some reason, once you've done this recipe, you find that your lotion bars are too soft, you may want to remelt them down and add more beeswax. I kind of found that the equal parts did make it a little bit of a softer of a bar. It still held its shape, but it was a little softer than I would like. Personally, I like them to be quite hard. So next time I'll probably add a pinch more of the beeswax, because the beeswax is what's going to harden it up a little bit better. So once we have all of our ingredients in the jar, we are going to heat our jar in some hot water. So I have a little pot here. In the bottom of the pot, I have a little trivet, a little like a silicone trivet. You can also use one of the mason jar canning lids. You just want to lift that jar up off the bottom so that it doesn't, break or get too heated on the bottom and burn. And then you're just going to simmer the water. Do not bring it to a boil. Just simmer it. It's going to take forever. And as it's simmering, you're going to go in there and you're going to stir. And really, the last item that takes to melt is going to be the beeswax. But just keep going, keep stirring until you get a completely liquid product. And you can see here, it's basically almost liquid. There's a tiny bit of beeswax pellets still there, but we are almost there. So here we are. It is completely all liquid now. And here's where I'm going to add some infused oil. I'm adding some vanilla. This is just for scent. It is just to make it smell pretty. You can use whatever scents you like. I love vanilla, so that's what I'm going with. If you had some lavender that you've gotten out of the garden, that would be a wonderful addition, I think, and an all-natural addition rather than using the essential oils. But I particularly like that vanilla essential oil. And we're going to mix that in. And then I have these cute little molds. You can find these silicone molds on Amazon. I'll put them in my Amazon store and down in the description below. They are a little bit difficult because they're so bendy. I put a cutting board underneath it so that way they could completely cool on the cutting board and I didn't have to move it. So once I have it with the cutting board in place, I'm going to pour the liquid into each one of these little silicone trays. The fun thing about these trays is they're shaped like flowers, which I thought was so pretty. The end result was really gorgeous. I'll show you in just a second. I thought I had measured enough to do all 6, but I had miscalculated and I was short one. So we only have 5. If you leave them on the counter, it'll probably take about an hour, maybe 2, for them to completely solidify. I waited until the next day to pop them out because I just wanted to make sure that they were super, super solid. And they still were a little bit soft to the touch. So once again, add a little bit more beeswax, or if you'd like, and you don't want to wait overnight, you could stick them in the refrigerator. This is where that cutting board would come into play because the cutting board could be lifted and put in the refrigerator and they could be cooled quite quickly. I'm wrapping them up in some wax paper, but I ordered some little plastic sleeves, soap sleeves I think that they are. They're basically for gifting. But I like to keep them in those sleeves just because they're easier to access. So the way that I use these is I unwrap them and I take either side. I kind of use the back side so that the pretty design is still present. And I just rub them on the heels of my feet or the balls of my feet or on your hands. And they create like a, I'd say kind of oily texture. And then I put some socks on, and within an hour or 2, they're dried, and your skin looks pretty amazing. Like within a few days, the dry skin that I was really dealing with this time of year has basically gone away. They look perfect. The other skincare item that we're going to be working on is lip balm. My husband is completely addicted to chapstick. He likes the soft lip chapstick, so I really wanted to make some that was similar to that. The only thing I didn't do was I could have added color to it to make it really like the soft lips or like, you know, the chapstick that he uses. But I didn't want to do that because I've never actually added color to anything and I don't really see a purpose, and I was worried it might stain his lips. But you totally could. I did this one a little bit different. I started out with 6 tablespoons of the calendula olive oil from our last recipe. And I'm using a crock pot, a little mini crock pot to do this. We're doing 2 types of calendula. We're doing the olive oil one as well as we're doing a coconut oil one. These are 2 different types of infusions. We only need a couple tablespoons of the coconut one, but since I already have it out and I already have plenty of flowers, I thought I would do a little bit extra. I like to use the crock pot because I had a lot going on that day and I didn't want to have to sit there and babysit it on the stove. And this worked out so well. In fact, I might always do my infusions like this. Now, this is a different way to do your infusions because with our olive oil, we had to let it sit for 6 to 8 weeks. But if you didn't have the time for that and you want a faster approach, you can do this approach, which is stick it in a crock pot with your oil of choice and let it sit in that crock pot for 3 hours. After the 3 hours, it will have infused. Now, I really think that the infusion of 6 to 8 weeks is better. I feel like it just really takes on a lot more of the characteristics that you're looking for. But if all you have time for is 3 hours, then you can totally do this way as well. I have a little strainer over there because I have a lot of petals inside that oil. And I added 2 tablespoons of the calendula coconut oil. Now I'm going to add my beeswax. And this is 4 tablespoons of the beeswax. And then we're going to put that right back in the little crock pot and we're going to let that heat up just like we would have on the stove. But once again, I don't have to babysit it, so it sat here for an hour or 2 and then within that time it completely liquefied everything, which is exactly what we're looking for. I added some vanilla essential oil again because his chapstick smells like vanilla, so I figured vanilla would go well with it. And then the other thing that we're going to add to it is 1 teaspoon of vitamin E oil. I obviously do not grow this or know how to grow this in my garden, so I'm using a vitamin E oil that we've purchased in the past. After that, we're going to mix that together, and then we're going to put them in the chapstick tubes. Now the chapstick tubes sit underneath this blue plate. They kind of click into place, and then that way if I'm a little messy with trying to get the oil into the tubes, it's not like a huge deal. So you pour as best you can into each one of the little holes, and then once all the holes are filled, this one made about 20 chapsticks, then you can take their little scooper that comes with it and scrape the top of it off so that you have a nice clean top to your chapsticks. From here, you just pop them out the bottom, you put the lid on top, and just like with our lotion bars, we're going to need these to sit for about 24 hours. You could also put them in the refrigerator. The thing I want to point out with these is you do not want to put these chapsticks in your car. They will melt. I keep them in my purse because my purse doesn't usually sit in my car, but you got to think about, where you're going to be keeping these chapsticks. You don't want to leave them somewhere where it's going to get very hot and then they're going to turn back to liquid and then you're going to have a mess on your hands. This next recipe is actually kind of 2 birds with 1 stone. I needed to cut back my perennial strawberries. My strawberry plants, I keep them as perennials here in Florida, but most people don't. Most people keep them as annuals because strawberries do not like our Florida summers. And so I cut them back to kind of force them into dormancy at an odd time of year, because usually they want dormancy during the winter if you live up north, but down here in Florida we force them into dormancy during the summer. So while I'm forcing them into dormancy by cutting off their leaves and tucking them away into a nice shady spot, I'm going to take this opportunity to use the leaves. Now, wild strawberry leaves actually have better medicinal properties than the domesticated strawberries that we grow today. But those strawberries that we grow today, which are the ones that I have here in my green stock, they do still have a lot of those good medicinal properties. So I'm cutting off the leaves and I'm going through them to find out which leaves have the best leaves. I don't want any leaves with any damage, bug damage, disease. I want like the perfect green leaves. And those are what I'm going to keep to make a tea. And this isn't just any tea. This is a tea that I'm going to be using for female health. I'll just say it like that. Strawberry leaves have a lot of tannins in them, which means that they are really good at managing diarrhea, helping with digestion, and also their inflammation properties, which is a lot of what us ladies go through when we are dealing with our monthly cycles. So by using this strawberry leaf tea, I can make myself a tea that I consume during that time, and it will help me deal with some of those symptoms. I also like to add different things to my strawberry tea to make it even yummier. So I like to use dried berries, freeze-dried berries. I also like to use chamomile because this is not a tea that has any kind of caffeine. This is an herbal tea. So once I have clipped them off the plant, I bring them inside, I clip off all of the stems, and then I wash the leaves really well. Then what I do is I will dehydrate them at the lowest setting. I'm not trying to cook these leaves. So the lowest setting on my dehydrator is 100 degrees. So I do 100 degrees for about 10 to 12 hours, and that usually is perfect. Once they're dehydrated, I grind them up into a powder using my little handheld blender. You could probably do this with just your hands or like a bag and crunch it together. I broke mine down to a complete powder because I have little tea bags, but if you're using one of those tea spoons that holds it in, you may not want to do it down to a powder because it's just going to leak through that. But you could grind them just with your hands, just crushing the leaves. But I find this just to be easier to use a blender to blend it into a powder. Once I have it blended into a powder, I am going to combine it with my chamomile using my little tea bags here. I have different teas for everything. I have holiday teas for hot tea. I have roselle tea to make like a red roselle cranberry red zinger tea, which is more of an iced tea. I do teas for colds and coughs, so I've used bee balm and oregano to make different teas for when I have a cold. I make regular iced tea using mint and lemon balm, and then, all kinds of stuff, all different kinds of flowers. Pretty much everything you can think of, I just throw into a tea bag and make myself these iced teas. Now, I know a lot of people aren't really into drinking hot teas. I'm not either. I like to make these all into iced teas. Sometimes I like to use them in the little tea bags if it's going to be a one-off type tea like this. But then I have other ones that I just combine together in a jar, and I use a tea infuser to make my teas. And I will make a large half-gallon jug of hot tea, and then I'll stick it in the refrigerator, add some honey, and then it becomes a nice, lovely iced tea. Which, where I live here in Florida, like, drinking hot stuff during the summer is awful. But drinking a nice, refreshing iced tea with some berries and some nice herbs, maybe some basil and some cucumber, oh, it's wonderful. It's refreshing. It tastes amazing, and all of those medicinal properties are there to help you with whatever you have going on. So we walked through how to make a tincture, we walked through how to make an oxymel, we made some lotion bars, some lip balm, and some nice strawberry leaf tea. I hope you guys enjoyed this. Make sure to hit that subscribe and notification bell so that you can see all my upcoming videos around medicinals. I have a ton more that I want to do, including mosquito sprays, moringa gummies, and even elderberry syrup and tincture. I am so looking forward to all of those. Thank you so much for hanging out with me today, making all of these wonderful medicinal recipes. Happy gardening, guys!